Wonderful. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to hand it over to Gerd Gemunden, longtime WRIF board member and film selector, and he's the person that found this wonderful film for us. And anyway, take it away, Gerd.
Okay, thanks, Craig. And I just noticed Stacie has joined us with video as well. So welcome, Stacie. It's wonderful to have you be part of this conversation. Your audio is not turned on, but we can. There you are. Wonderful. So so we're glad we have a good portion of the team here, and of course, you are the heart of that film in many ways. So we're super excited that you can join.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Yeah, so Craig just said, I found this film. It's more like this film found me, because I came across this film when Jennifer's colleague, Ruby Rich, whom many of you know in her capacity as a film critic and a film scholar, visited the Dartmouth campus to talk about her own work. And during, I think it was a 2-day stay, and during one of the breaks, she showed me footage on her phone saying, Gerd, you should look at this. This is a documentary about the refugees coming to Rutland. You know, that's not far from here, is it? And so we looked at this footage, or whatever Ruby had on her phone, and I think that was in 2016. And then my interest was piqued, because I regularly teach a course on issues of migration. And in 2017, when I offered that course again, Jennifer, this is when you joined us and showed quite a bit of the film, which was very much a work in progress then, and discussed it with our students here. And at that point, it was also still a somewhat different film. It was more focused on the Syrian refugees that were still expected to come to Rutland. And at that point, it wasn't clear that they were not coming, or so few of them were coming. And then when we saw the film, when I saw the full film in 2000, I think 19, late 19, when we started looking for films for the 2020 festival, I noticed it had changed quite a bit. So we can talk about that a little bit. I introduced you, Jennifer, on Friday night to the WRIF community and the members in the audience, but maybe you could begin by saying a few things about your team that's here, and how you found them, and yeah.
So I also want to thank you, Gerd, and Craig and Samantha, my old friend, and Nora, for welcoming us, for showing the film, for the beautiful honor also that you've done this film. It's just been wonderful. Joanna, you as well. I've just appreciated so much that we've been able to make this happen despite all the obstacles. And Stacie, of course, I think everyone has gotten to know a little bit through the film. I had mentioned that she's the heart and soul of this project, and that really is true. We met early on when I was doing research and still was kind of casting about to see how the story of the film would unfold. And at the time, the town was very stuck, I would say, in some respects, at least publicly, in two camps: pro-refugee, anti-refugee. And Stacie, I think, like a lot of folks, just hadn't yet decided what to think or how to react, and that was very interesting to me, to see could we maybe engage with someone who hadn't yet made up their mind about how this town would evolve. And Lisa, I had the just tremendous pleasure of getting to know also through filming. Lisa, you and I met through Jim, the film's local Rutland-based reporter, journalist, one-man band film crew, story producer. And Jim, I always embarrass you by saying this, but younger brother of my dear friend JJ, who I went to elementary school with in Rutland. But Lisa, I think you and I met first through Jim before you had run for office. and before you won, and of course that became part of the film. And then, eventually, I know through a lot of our discussions, we decided it really enhanced the story to have your point of view in it as well, particularly after you and Stacie got a chance to meet and start interacting. And then Jim, as I mentioned, I know his last name, and anybody who lives in Rutland knows the Sabatso last name, because your family's been there a long time, Jim, and runs some of the best restaurants in town. But when I first started researching the story, Jim was writing opinion pieces, right, Jim, at the time for the Rutland Herald. Now you're doing education reporting, but Jim started writing, I think, really presciently. This was in 2016, kind of in the middle of 2016. Jim immediately put his finger on what was happening with the rhetoric in Rutland, that a lot of it was being shaped by outside groups. And this was before we, I think, really saw the kind of network of disinformation and biased information that was coming out as part of the 2016 election, often whipping up xenophobia and divisions among people in the United States, sort of circumventing what could be otherwise maybe really healthy dialogue about where we need to go. Even if we don't all agree, can we have dialogue that's healthy? So Jim, you really had put your finger on that feeling very early. And that was a big reason I, of course, asked you to work with me, other than feeling like I knew you my whole life because of JJ threw the best pool party we ever had in 3rd grade, and I'll never forget it. So anyway, those are the folks I had the absolute thrill of being able to work with. And I would say, if anything, we now all feel like we're family to each other, despite the fact that we've been separated by the pandemic and also by just physical distance.
Mm-hmm. Jim, Stacie, Lisa, do you want to say a little bit about your interaction with Jennifer, and also about, participating in the film?
Well, I know for me, it took some getting used to, and it took some relationship building before, I really opened up. And I think that's important. And I'm grateful that we did that, because that's why the film is so strong, is because of that bond we had formed prior. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a lot of learning. I know for myself it was. In my opinion, I didn't have a natural opinion either for the refugees coming or not coming, due to lack of education, lack of information, inclusiveness, connecting, so on and so forth. So throughout the film, it was just nice to be able to do that, and it comes through, and I'm grateful that I got to be a part of it and work with the wonderful people I did. Mm-hmm. And we are now family, I agree.
There's a wonderful quick scene about 60, 70 minutes into the film where you, Stacie, go into some public auditorium. Looks like could be a movie theater. There's sort of these kind of seats you have in movie theaters, and you talk to 2 young men, and you're saying, we're making a movie. And I thought, okay, we are making a movie. And I thought that was very touching. At that moment, it felt like you're not just in front of the camera, but you also sort of really, part of the project and are taking ownership together with the others.
I agree. And I also believe that you meet people where they're at. So I think it's important to say things in ways that others can understand at times. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I learned throughout the film, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Lisa, you want to say something about participating in this film?
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So I think like Jennifer said, I became introduced to Jennifer, I think, right before 2017. So I was running for the Rutland City Board of Aldermen. And of course, this was the same year that the refugee resettlement was the biggest issue, and kind of the competing mayoral election was also that same time. So I certainly was very much pro the resettlement. That was something that was very clear to me, that the more people that we have here in our community, the more folks that don't look like us or don't talk like us, the better of a community we're going to be. I met Stacie through this journey, although I think we've probably run into each other in spaces and places such as like Project Vision, but I didn't know her, personally or anything. And then Jim, it's a small town, and like Jennifer said, a well-known family and restaurant. So I've known Jim for a while, but we really got to know each other through this film, and seeing each other at a very popular local coffee shop almost every morning. So we connected there, and he made the connection for Jen and I, which has been a really extraordinary relationship. Like Stacie said, relationship building was really the foundation of this film, and certainly opened my eyes to things that I didn't know as somebody who has grown up and lived in Rutland my entire life. So very grateful for the folks that I got to work with and for this film. And Stacie really is an incredible person.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
And Jim, Jennifer introduced you as a field and story producer, but you also have a credit for camera work. So you did many different things.
I wore a lot of hats. It was a really unexpected and an ultimately amazing experience. But when Jen and I first talked, when she reached out to me, I had done a little bit of documentary work years and years ago with a friend, but nothing really substantial. And she just made the pitch to me, and I'm coming into this as a print journalist who at the time was doing opinion pieces in the Rutland Herald, and was following the refugee resettlement matter very closely. But it was we actually showed up after doing some emails and some phone calls and kind of getting a sense of what we wanted to do, and then she finally comes to town, sticks a camera in my hand, and we go and start filming, and that was my crash course in documentary filmmaking. And for her to have the faith and trust in me to do it, and then to be kind of the feet on the ground when she was back out west, sort of following kind of the turn of the screw of as the everything progressed. It was really a unique experience, and I'm glad I got to contribute to it. And I think we really did do something special and caught something really fascinating ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, thank you. Jennifer, you said when you just talked a little bit about the film that this chronicles Rutland at a time when a lot of misinformation was being circulated, when sort of really distinct lines were drawn between the population, and ideological differences really were pitted against each other. But at the same time, it's also a film that doesn't ridicule the people who have a different opinion than yours, and it shows them with dignity and with a certain sense of fairness. And I think that's one of the many things that makes this film powerful, that you don't adopt that same tone of ridiculing the other, or telling us what to think about that. And
yeah, thank you for noticing that. And I hope that's the case. And I hope everyone who's in the film does feel that we've treated them with dignity, and an acknowledgement of their full humanity. And to me, I think that was part of what we were all after, is living in a community, that's on the smaller side. You have not just the chance, but almost the obligation to find a way to live together despite your differences. And that doesn't mean not being honest about them, And it doesn't mean not expressing how you feel or pretending if you
Mhm.
think something is amiss. But at the same time, it's really important to recognize, particularly in a community like Rutland, and I think all throughout, New England, people are wearing 5 different hats in their community. And you may be in a space where you vehemently disagree with each other about politics, but then in the case of Mr. Chaffee, who in a certain sense stood in for the anti-refugee population, he used to be a good friend of my dad. And they organized together for any number of community causes. And he treated me with nothing but respect. And so where I may have a difference, a very strong difference of opinion with him, or actually a number of other people in the film, I wouldn't want that to overshadow the importance of showing a holistic portrait. And, I mentioned in my introductions to the film that this is a kind of love letter to this town. It was a town we moved to when I was a kid in elementary school from Los Angeles, because my parents wanted us to have, I think, the experience of living somewhere small where you are really challenged to build community across all kinds of lines. And I wanted this film to reflect that. I don't think any of us realized, I think Jim, Lisa, Stacie, and I, as we embarked on this, I don't think we realized the gravity of the place that we're in now as a country and perhaps as a world, where the lines are getting drawn so starkly that we're in real, I think, danger. And so if anything, I don't think we can sugarcoat. I don't think we can pretend that, yay, kumbaya, let's all get along, because I don't think that's fair either. But I think there's got to be some way that we find to engage with difference and continue to cohabitate on this little blue marble that we all call home. So I guess that was the core impulse of this. And I'll say one other thing, which is I feel Stacie, with her just incredible generosity of sharing her life, brought a sense of real depth to the story, because on the surface, it was about how this town is going to split into self-identified ideological camps. But what was getting lost in that was the story of folks like Stacie, who are also just really struggling day to day, and who also, Stacie, you have so much dignity, and you're so brilliant, and you're so loving, and you're so dedicated to your community. And those are the stories that often get lost, I think, as we kind of run around following who's yelling at whom. And that was also a lot of what we just wanted to do, was to follow the life and the struggle of someone who isn't picking sides, but who's there every day trying to make things better.
But I think it's also important to, I'm hoping the film has brought through that differences of opinion doesn't mean that there's differences in people. We all have commonalities. We're in this together, and I hope it shows that you can have respect and agree to disagree in a healthy, respectful way.
Thank you. We have a question from Faith, and actually I can see everybody who is participating, so I can either, Faith, read your question, or you can also ask it yourself, whatever you prefer.
I'll ask it myself. Thank you, Gerd. This is a wonderful film. We just loved it. My husband and I were there Friday night, and I'm wondering, how hard was it for the filmmakers to stay out of the story? Because there's some heartbreaking moments, especially when Stacie says there's no food in the house. And I wonder what that was like for you, knowing you could help her, and maybe you did help her, but how did you balance your objectivity?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it's an excellent question. Stacie, I'm curious how you'll also respond to this. And Jim, you as well, since we were so involved in this, and Lisa too. I mean, I think that ethically, making documentaries is brings up a lot of questions, and while we were trying to be, I think, open about the fact that we were. Salud, we were trying to be open about the fact that we really did want to make space for all of the kind of ideological points of view in the film. We also wanted people to know that we were there, so that's why deliberately there were moments where you could either hear me or Jim or see that people were interacting with us. And, I don't think that the film is entirely objective. I think it actually has a point of view in it. Just, again, one that we've tried to balance with respect. And, we didn't, Stacie, we didn't, pay Stacie to be in the film. We tried to abide by, good journalistic standards, but we did often go out for meals together. There were times
Absolutely.
when, because I do think of Stacie very much as family, we've shared the bits of revenue that have come in so far from the film. I feel that that's something Stacie has well earned, and that this has been work. So we've tried to, I guess, if that makes sense, try to find a balance that would be particularly around the film, finding it as a means to for Stacie to be part of that team. That not that documentary filmmaking is particularly remunerative, but so I don't know if that's a good enough answer. But yeah.
How about you, Stacie? Were there moments when you wished that the filmmakers would just put down the camera and give you a hand?
Not at all. I think that it's important that, people see in the film that, sometimes in community, there's a disconnect with resources and so on and so forth. And one thing I hope this film teaches us is, to make them connections and build them bridges where they're lacking. And I hope that was part of it as well.
It was huge.
Yeah. I mean, we had to be faithful to what was happening. Right. And I do think it's fair, Stacie. I mean, we would talk about this a lot,
Yes.
About what was kind of the moral thing for us to do.
Absolutely.
As we were doing. And I think, Stacie, you were very adamant that we be faithful to what your experiences were.
And you were, absolutely,
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So.
We got a question from Laura.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see your faces and actually hear how all this making this film was for you, because it's an incredible film. Mm-hmm. And I think that the best films in the world are the ones that can show the different edges, the different points of view, and it's amazing how you can show that. And my question is the same as Nora. It's how the town of Rutland deal with all the movie. What happened after releasing the movie? There has been any change in Rutland or?
Well, because the pandemic interrupted our plans, we had planned to come last year to show the film with White River, and also to go to Rutland and do a number of screenings and engagement sessions about how we would actually use the film further for community dialogue. And that'll had to be put on hold. And I'm hoping prior to our PBS broadcast later this year, we'll be able to put some of those plans in place. So that's on the part of the film, but I will defer to Jim and Lisa and Stacie as to where Rutland is now, because I haven't been able to be there since the pandemic hit.
Yeah, that would probably be a question that interests many in the audience. Where do you see Rutland now?
Yeah, I can jump in. I'd love for Lisa and Stacie to please jump in too, because we all have very different perspectives and where the community's at right now. I'd say one thing to Jennifer's point, we haven't had a chance to screen it, but there's a number of Rutlanders, community members who have had a chance to see it, have dialed into other festivals and been able to watch it. So in that sense, I've been able to get a little feedback from people here and there who have seen it and were moved by it, and just the reactions, but we haven't really got that that community-wide reaction. Just like a packed room of Rutlanders actually watching it, which I'm really looking forward to, because I think that's going to be powerful for us. I would say where Rutland is maybe where Rutland has always been. It's a work in progress. And we are still grappling with a lot of these issues, I think more intensely now, with issues of inclusion and who belongs here, who doesn't belong here, who gets to kind of control the narrative of what this community is, especially around issues of race and inclusion and in class as well. We're still working through that, and I think Lisa, for her time on the board, can speak to a lot of that. But it's still very much in the forefront of the conversation happening in the community, and happening in conversations not happening in the community as well.
Very well said, Jim.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with Jim. I said this in some other like debriefs that we've done for this film, that every single person that lives in Rutland County needs to see this film. It's a must. I think and I hope that it'll change some of those narratives that Jim spoke about. And just putting some context and timeline into this, I ran for the Board of Aldermen in 2017, and I just finished my second term in March of 2021. So I spent 4 years, and it would be really interesting to see how, if, when Rutland has kind of shifted as a result of this film. But from a community perspective, nobody, community-wide, like Jim said, has really seen it. I'm really interested for when that time comes. But to be, frankly, brutally honest, Rutland is a divisive, a very unwelcoming place right now. And we've got a lot of work to do. And 99% of the reason that I didn't run for another term is because of those very things, like lack of inclusivity and the racism and things like that. So, and I by no means want to make this about me, but I do think that is important to see the time of this filming started to now, and my time on the board, and just things that are still going on, conversations about, Syrian refugees and what that would look like now. Folks are still pretty close-minded, and frankly, we've got a lot of work to do, and I'm just so excited for when folks and community members can see this film, because we are all one community, and I think Stacie is the heart and soul of this film. And growing up here my entire life, I didn't, people are struggling, but because you hear about it, but you never really see it from a personal perspective. And for me, just the vulnerability of Stacie and her family was just incredibly brave. And also, like, we need to help our neighbors, and whoever that looks like.
Again, very well said, Lisa. And I agree. I think we are stuck, unfortunately, but I do have hope that once the film is released into the community, I hope that it is the foundation for things to come. And I know it's going to be work, and I know it's going to take time, and I know it's going to, take a lot of effort to get people to change their way of thinking. But I think this film speaks for itself, and I believe that it's the foundation for that to happen. Again, very well said, Jim and Lisa, and I agree.
Thank you. We got a question from Jean Yeager.
Hi. Yep. Thank you. My wife and I are not from Rutland originally. We've lived here for a decade now. We've been very active in Project Vision and I teach classes at Marble Valley, and my wife and I have both been in the restorative justice program for a number of years. And we are also a part of the Quaker community in the area here. And the only thing I want to say is we have not seen the film, so I cannot offer any comment whatsoever, other than to say we heard about the film existence yesterday. And so we found our way onto this particular link through a friend of ours in White River Junction. Now, this is clearly the wrong place for us to be in terms of being able to offer anything to your conversation or what your future plans are, other than to say that we will, as quickly as we can, go and watch the film and try to get our community, our smaller community members to see the film. Because the issues and the concerns that I'm sure that this film raises and brings out, we have been involved with for quite a number of years. And I'm sure you accurately portray that. We know that we lived those interactions and those disagreements on a firsthand basis in our community, and look forward to how you portray them. But just to say that I think there are many people in our community who wish to continue to make change and continue to make Rutland transformational. I mean, I've worked with so many people in the restorative justice, that people that have been incarcerated because of addiction and whatnot, who are bound and determined that changes will happen with the people with whom they are connected. And so I wish you well. I wish you, I hope for as quickly as you can to release this to the community. And I then look forward to hearing about what kind of response you get.
Well,
Because
thank you for
this
that.
has got to have a significant response in the community. Did the
Well,
faith,
thank you.
was this released to the faith community?
Well, thank you very, very much for everything you've said and for jumping in today. It's so deeply appreciated by all of us. The film has just been going to film festivals, and it'll be out on PBS later this year, so it will have a very wide release. And we're just still working out the details of that. But in the preamble to that broadcast, and hopefully after, we do really hope to engage with a number of communities, and very much with the faith and interfaith communities. I don't know if you all know the folks at the UU Church in Rutland, but that's been
Yes.
my own family. I don't know if you know my mom, Kate Taylor, by any chance, but that's our own family, or my dad, Jeff, who passed away a few years ago. That was our base when we moved to Rutland. And I feel very strongly that this film could really speak to folks who are in those interfaith circles,
I am
again,
sure.
from different points of view, but who are interested in building a more inclusive society that also really looks at class and looks at all of the ways that we're making people struggle so desperately to live. And Reverend Barber's movement with the Poor People's Campaign and the Moral Mondays movement in North Carolina, to me, is very much a model of what we hope this film will hopefully support. So
thanks very much for your comments. And the film is, if you want to see the film now, it is of course streaming on our WRIF platform. So the same spot where you found the link to this conversation, you will also find a link to rent this film and watch it just the two of you, or now that it's possible, invite a few other folks over, and maybe there's somebody who has a beamer, so you can have your own little screening. And I think it's probably fun to watch this film with a small group, at least, to see how and talk about it and to see how people react. We have a question from Samantha, and then another one from Faith.
I was actually just going to make sure to share that it's also available through our website. to watch until May 30th. But in addition to that, I wanted to mention that the Rutland Herald did also do a profile on our film festival. Unfortunately, it just came out on the 20th of May, just the day before our outdoor screening. So I think most Rutland readers might not have seen it in time. But if you can help us spread the word in Rutland, we'd love to have people come to our site and watch it. And I wanted to just chime in that we've had similar issues in our community here, particularly in the realm of politics. And I just think I wanted to ask Lisa, actually, this deviates a little bit from the film, but just in networking among towns, I've been very disturbed to learn about the great loss of Black women leadership in Vermont that has happened over the last year or a couple of years with Kaya Morris and then Rachel Edens in our community. She was scheduled to actually moderate a WRIF conversation this winter, a series of short films that we were bringing to our community to try to facilitate this kind of productive dialogue. And we had a wonderful session, but she backed out because she was running for office in Hartford and was targeted on social media with a lot of racist vitriol. So I am interested in what your perspective is on the role that the arts can have or what we could be doing better to continue to create a culture that supports the political leadership that's necessary to and to sustain people who've put themselves out as you have. And thank you for your service.
Thank you so much, Samantha. And yes, Rachel is somebody I've connected with over the past probably year or so, along with others who are in the same space of, women of color having to step down from office or not rerun because of pure assault and harassment. And that has been very much my experience. So my first thing, I guess it's such a loaded but important question is to just believe our stories and know that these are our truths and that we've been living these truths for years and years and years. And with the national climate and everything going on, it just makes it more difficult. So I would ask and also be allies, be great allies. We need folks to step in and help us do this work. We can't do it alone to create more inclusive and equitable communities. We really, really need to make sure that we know that there are people there that don't look like us, that still support us. So big ask, but a big question. So I appreciate you lifting that up and just recognizing that our truths around Black women, particularly our BIPOC communities in politics in the state of Vermont is incredibly, incredibly harmful.
Faith, you have another question?
Yeah, this is more of a comment, but it seems to me because everything's online now, this is a wonderful opportunity for the people in Rutland that want to see the movie. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they just log on to WRIF and buy a cheap pass, right? And then they get to see their film. So I don't know, Jean and Stacie and Jim and Lisa, do you have a listserv or anything in Rutland? Because if I lived in Rutland, I sure as hell want to know what that film is about. And this is a great, great opportunity if you have some way of spreading the word for people to see it right now.
Jim, do you know if it's...
Well, like I say, speaking for ourselves, we only heard about this thing last night. So
yeah, I'm just saying though, but is there
if you'd be so kind as to provide us with information and links and things like that, then we'd be happy to try to do what we possibly can. But
I think you just have to go on the WRIF film site. I think maybe Samantha can speak to that, but it's really not that hard.
Well,
Johanna just put a link in the chat. If you open your chat, there's a direct link and that will do everything you need. Thank you, Johanna.
thanks for that plug, Faith. Once a riffer, always a riffer. it's very up. So that's wonderful. I wonder if I'm overlooking anybody who had raised a hand. No. Jennifer, I had another question for you. I mean, you talked about how you had, I mean, you lived in this community for formative years, and you knew Jim's older brother, and you knew your father's friend your father is friends or was friends with one of the gentlemen portrayed in the film. But in interviews, you all have also described your position vis-a-vis Rutland as an insider and an outsider at the same time, because obviously you moved from Los Angeles to rural Vermont, and there's a certain culture shock involved. Also now it's been a while, since you've lived there, and so I'm wondering if the people of Rutland looked at you as some California-based filmmaker who comes in and teaches film school at a school that has a rather leftist reputation, and so here you are and making a film. And did people feel like you're gonna have an agenda anyhow, and like with suspicion, or at least not sort of welcoming you with open arms, like, oh, finally somebody's making a movie about us?
Yeah, actually that's perfectly put, Gerd. I mean, we moved there in the 70s, as a lot of folks were doing in that time, sort of the back to the land wave. And it was very surprising I was a kid, I was in elementary school, but nonetheless, it was, there was a fair amount of culture shock. And of course, this was all pre-internet, and when it cost a lot of money to make long distance phone calls. So it felt very isolated from what we knew. And all of our family was in, Southern California, and to a certain extent, on my dad's side, also in Mexico. And then on my mom's side, we discovered a lot of relatives on the East Coast. So over time, we built up sort of an East Coast family contingent. But I always felt a little bit inside outside growing up there. And I think that's probably what made me become a documentary filmmaker, because I was really interested in particularly something I referenced, I think, early, which is how communities form and what are the ways that we're all connected to each other. And it felt very palpably, it felt almost obvious in a community like Rutland, because everybody's connected to each other. And my dad was a lawyer, and he used to have an office on Center Street in downtown Rutland with this big, huge picture window right above Holly's Florist. And he had a back door to the Back Home Cafe, so I could meet him when I was in high school, and we could go get beer, because the drinking age was pretty low at the time. And he would stand in the window and sort of come home at night and report in on everything he'd seen on Center Street, and who was with so-and-so, and who maybe was having an affair with so-and-so, and who was doing this and who was doing that. And of course, we always teased him and said, "Dad, did you ever do any work?" But it was, I think I kind of inherited this love from him and from my mom as well of what it's like to really know the people that you live with, right? But always had this, at the same time, just a little sense of, but we weren't exactly from there. We didn't really have a lot of history there. So I guess it made like a little in and out feeling. Mm-hmm. And it's true, when I came to start making this film, I actually had the idea at my father's memorial service to make a film about Rutland, because I hadn't been there in a couple of years, and I was actually very taken aback at the toll the opioid epidemic had taken on the town. And that was a few years before the Syrian refugee issue started, and it didn't feel like the right time or place to try to make a film about that. I knew it was very painful for people, and it had been really sensationalized, and it just didn't seem like the right thing. And because I hadn't been living there, I was afraid I would be one of those parachute journalists coming in. So when the refugee issue started, to become an issue, it felt to me like a good story catalyst. And it was one I could do justice, because I did have family living there. My mom still lives in the community. She sees Jim every Friday at the cafe that he mentioned. Stacie and I discovered, of course, we have connections through my mom. I mean, all of us are connected, despite the fact that I hadn't been there. So I think that mitigated some people's sense that I was an outsider. And I think it helped in some respects. We had interesting encounters. One time Stacie and I were filming, and Jim, I think you were there too, where we met one of my dad's clients, who he and I burst into tears when we met each other because my dad had helped him adopt his daughter. So there were those connections. The other thing I should say is that my parents are both very socially progressive and very politically progressive and very active. So in some respects, their reputation preceded me. So people knew that, you know, I come from a family of folks who were unafraid about their own opinions. And so occasionally I did get a little suspicion about that. One time someone, I overheard someone saying, "Oh, Jeff Taylor's kid is here," and kind of rolled her eyes. And I just went up and said, "Oh, you knew my dad. Great," to try to diffuse the tension. So I don't know if that it helps, but I think there was something really essential though about us making the film, that we had a shared feeling together. Stacie and Lisa and Jim and I, despite our age differences, despite the fact I haven't lived there in 35 years, but you know, I was come back and visit, we all share a lot of deep memories and feelings about very specific places and things that you can't replicate, you know, or make up. And so I think ultimately that helped us have a sense of common cause, that we had to make a story that was really honest and it wasn't going to pretend that everything's okay. But at the same time, it was done with love and an honest love that means also showing what's not working for many people in that community.
And I just want to say that I that's why I believe the film is the foundation for the city, you know, to be an example of how change can happen and, you know, be positive and better. That's my hope, is we're the foundation. And I believe that. I believe our film is the foundation for a better future.
I just want to say too, Jennifer has an amazing skill, which I think makes her a really amazing filmmaker, of disarming people and making people feel comfortable when she's around there with her big alien looking Bolex camera and can still just put people at ease in a way that I think between, you know, having enough of a local connection and sometimes me running a little, you know, kind of interference or greasing the wheels a little bit before we get someplace, that then Jen just would show up somewhere and people would be ready to talk and feel comfortable. And I mean, I think it's how we got a lot of our best stuff was, you know, owed to Jen's talent there. And I think the stuff with Don Chaffee, to be able to get kind of the candid the way he interacted with us was really thanks to Jen. So I think it's a special skill she has.
Oh, well, Jim, thank you for saying that. I just want to say one other thing though, and I really thank you for saying that. And there's zero way, there was no chance we could have made this film without Jim.
No, I agree.
Yeah, just you were so pivotal to this. I think one thing is we moved there on purpose as an adventure. And growing up, we would just always giggle at my dad because everything he would say, "Hey kids, isn't this neat? Hey kids, isn't this neat?" So for example, the demolition derby that begins the film, we all thought that was really cool, coming from LA where we hadn't seen stuff like that. And so I think some of the divisions that exist in Rutland, particularly around class or around sort of, you know, culture and lifestyle, we actually didn't, in some respects, we weren't attuned to those in a way because everything was so interesting and cool and fun. And so, you know, just, I don't know, I think it just, I will say, Jim, thank you for that. I will say I making this film was actually channeling my parents and how much they love that community and how open they were to everyone in that community. So that's. that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. Now that so many people moved from New York and other big cities to Vermont and New Hampshire, maybe in a few years we can, see how that plays out. But anyway, that would get us. That's a whole different topic. That would get us somewhere else. But Nora had a question about the film structure. So Nora, I assume you want to just ask that question yourself.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I will. And I'll probably have to jump off in the middle because I have people coming at 6. Anyway, I'm sorry. But I have so many questions. I love your film, Jennifer. Did I hear you say, or someone say you shot with a Bolex?
I shot with a digital Bolex.
Oh,
yeah.
digital.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
good.
Very strange little camera. Yeah.
Yes, I know it. I haven't used it, but so I was curious about the structure of the film because there were dates. And so, I knew that there was an attempt certainly to create a chronology. I felt that the film was more cubist in a funny way because I wasn't, I wasn't sure that actually the things that were happening in the order that I was seeing them had happened chronologically. And so I was curious, did you actually does the film unfold chronologically, or did you move around in time?
Well, that's a question, a great filmmaker question to filmmakers. So thank you for catching that. We did lay it out, of course, with some milestones, and we did feel it was important to timestamp and make it somewhat chronologically. But of course, there were a few sort of set piece scenes that took place a little bit out of time or where we did move things around. We did try to stay, though, faithful to the chronology of events as they unfolded in the town with regard to the refugee resettlement and also with regard to some of Stacie's life changing experiences. But sure, there were a few things we moved around a little bit, and that would be to make a point. And I like what you said about the film being cubist because I didn't want it to feel too linear, and I didn't want it to feel too event driven. I did want it to feel almost more tone poemy sometimes and more immersive. And you also asked about working with the composer, and the composer really was key to that effort to make the film more emotionally resonant and maybe not always make you feel dictated by the flow of events.
Sure.
And so I was very fortunate that the Sundance Music and Sound Design Lab paired me with Emily Rice, who's the brilliant composer who wrote the score, and we got a chance to workshop some scenes, including the opening where Stacie has her sort of reverie in the monster truck. We talked a lot about just sort of emotionally how we wanted the different scenes to flow with the music cues. And yeah, I mean, I think we made the film in a certain sense more based on emotion.
Yeah, I definitely felt that for sure.
Yeah,
And the music
yeah.
is beautiful. I mean, it's mournful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not triumphant, but it's beautiful music. Just one last thing before I hop off is the mayor. Many of us know that he lost his son a couple of years ago. And so that I found him very heartbreaking also because I really liked him and his bluntness, his outspokenness, but I couldn't help but think, oh my God, he lost his job and then he lost his son. And I'm wondering about your relationship with him and what happened.
That would be one I'll defer again to Jim and Stacie and Lisa on. But yeah, it was a horrific event. Horrific that he lost his son.
Yeah, I can hop in unless you want to go, Jim.
You're open.
Okay. I would just say that that was an incredibly difficult time for our community, and no matter what side of politics or class or whatever that you stood on, our community very much did come together, and including Mayor Lair and former Mayor Chris Loris. And I would say also just that Chris Loris is an absolutely amazing person. I wish I had the time to work with him and city council, but I'll also say he is one of the best friends that I have in this community. So we definitely were all devastated by the tragedy, and although there were lots of things going on, this certainly made it so that we all came together.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. I have to go.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Nora, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. And I'll just say one thing that follows up on Lisa's comment, which is related to Johanna's question about things we had to cut out of the film. There was a beautiful moment where Chris, he had lost his
What's going on?
Race, but he had lost by then. Chris and Stacie sat down and had a really long conversation that we were able to film, and it just didn't fit in the structure of the film. But I appreciate so deeply, Stacie, that you and he had an honest conversation, and I think you pushed him a little bit on some things that you didn't agree with him on, but you also it again just exemplified what I think is the best, when people are able to be honest with each other in community.
It was one of my favorite parts of the film. The top 3 was sitting down and having a discussion with him, in a real honest discussion.
Yeah. And to his great credit, he took your criticism and just really engaged with you.
Absolutely, he did.
Yeah. So I wish we could have included that. And there were a few other moments. The other moment I'm sad we had to cut out was the bocce ball at the Italian American Club that Jim's dad is a part of. But again, it just didn't fit time-wise.
Sorry, I had to step away for a family. There's lots of advantages to Zoom, so lots of people can join us who not here. There are also some disadvantages if there's an emergency, and even a small one in your house, like, I'm here now. So anyway, so sorry for that. Johanna, I don't know if you got to your question, because it's related to it was related to Nora's question. So Johanna, did you have a chance to ask that question?
Yeah, Jennifer answered it while you were out. Very interesting scenes. I wish I could have seen that bocce ball scene. Just sounds really interesting and different from other stuff in the film. But thank you for your answer, Jennifer.
I think I have it on Vimeo because it's one that we workshopped at the Sundance Lab. I'll see if I can send it to you. It was great. It just was kind of, we're going to cut the film down a tiny bit for PBS, so we're going to have to lose a couple things. But yeah, it was fun, and the teams had some naughty names, so it was pretty funny.
Samantha.
I have a question that I'm going to ask Stacie in just a second, but before I do that, since we have so many Rutland people on the line, I wanted to share a gift that we're going to be sending to Jennifer for the award that we gave her on Friday night at the festival. We have an artist in White River Junction who does hand-painted lampshades, and he custom made this one, which was a landscape of Rutland for Jennifer. So we're going to be mailing that to him. So anyway,
that is stunning.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. That's so beautiful.
I'm so happy there's so many people from Rutland on this call that I can share that with before I send it to California. I wanted to ask Stacie, Jennifer said in her introductory remarks when you guys were getting to know each other that she was so interested in your perspective as you were kind of trying to decide how you felt about these changes happening in your town. And you have one of your moms, your foster mom character who gives you an incredible, talking to at a picnic table, and this concept of white syndrome, which I think is an extremely useful category that I hope this film will help to encourage people to really contemplate what she means by that. But I'm curious if you can share with us, if you're able to describe what forces ultimately have affected the changes that you've undergone in your understanding of your community, and were there individual people close to you like her, or did the process of filming itself facilitate maybe stepping into other points of view?
I think a little bit of everything. Filming, my mom's conversations throughout the film, conversations before and after filming, a little bit of everything. I feel that since filming, I have a better sense of community and a better sense of understanding and respecting others. And I feel that that has helped me grow to the positive place that I am today. We have moved prior to filming or after filming to a great location, believe it or not, right down the street from where we lived while we filmed. And the difference is night and day, and it's put us in a healthy position to really grow as a family, let alone into the community. Hence the pandemic starting. You know, here we are today. But yeah, a little bit of everything, before, after, during, you know, but it has shaped me to be a better person and to be in a better place, honestly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura?
Yeah, it's just a simple question. I don't know if you already talked about this, but how did you meet? How did you find Stacie, and why her? I mean, how was that process?
Stacie, do you want to stay?
Go ahead. It was quite, oh, I'm so sorry. It was quite natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually
Oh,
doing
gosh.
a little research filming in the little park outside Stacie's house that you see so much at that picnic table, Samantha.
I don't know what I did.
Reference? Oh, there you are. There you are.
Sorry.
And Stacie, you came out when we were, remember I was
I
filming
did.
with Pam, who became also
I
a
did,
good friend and I
yes.
think mentor of yours.
Absolutely.
And Pam and I were sitting in the park, and the park had just opened, and we were doing a little research filming, and Stacie came out, and I think you were cleaning off the park equipment.
Yeah, the kids were getting ready to come home from school.
Yeah.
So yeah, something I did on a daily basis was clean the park.
And I saw that and I thought, wow, this is a person who really cares.
Mhm.
And then we just started chatting, and you know, I knew immediately that you're an amazing person. And so we just kind of went from there.
We actually talked for hours that day.
We did.
Like, that was mind blowing.
Yeah. And you said to me that you never want to stop learning.
Absolutely not.
And I thought, well, that's, you know, if you want to make a film about people and ideas and how we form things, what better person than someone who says, I don't want to ever stop learning. Right. So
absolutely.
That's what started us on our way. And I'm so grateful for it.
And Stacie, did you feel confidence right away, or because it's really difficult for you to open your life like that? So how?
No, actually, I did feel a confidence in our friendship, our relationship building immediately. It felt like we had known one another for years. It was beautiful. And same when Jim joined, and so on and so forth, and Lisa as well. But no, not at first. It took some time. I mean, I opened my home, my everything, you know, for this film, you know, because it's not just my reality. It's a lot of others in my community as well. And I figured, you know, if I can be the voice and the foundation to start change or make change happen, or just start a conversation or make someone think differently, it's all worth it. But yes, it took some time. It took some building.
Thank you, Stacie. Just getting a signal. We slowly need to wrap up. Maybe time for one or two more questions? If anyone has any final questions? Samantha?
Well, my husband had to leave, but he wanted to just know if there were any updates about what's going on in Rutland, whether there have been changes with the different administration as far as refugees coming to the town or anything else to report.
I can field some of that. Not much has changed. We got our 3 families who arrived, and it's really just been, since there hasn't been an influx of refugees statewide or nationally right now. So, I think if there's an opportunity, there's certainly people within the community again who would be very eager to welcome more refugees. There has been a push not only in Rutland but around the county to get local governments to adopt statements of inclusion and statements rejecting discrimination. And Rutland adopted that recently. I mean, it's a statement. Actions are more significant, but it's a recognition among some of the community that we really do need to be moving in, continue moving in that direction, whether or not it's opening up to refugee families or just just creating a more inclusive and diverse community here. That said, there's still pushback around that, and among members of the Board of Aldermen, members of our local school board, just there's a sense in the community that issues of diversity, inclusion, equity are somehow still very contentious and politicized and pushing a certain agenda. And that's something that the community is still very much working through right now. And as far as the administration in the city, there's not much leadership there one way or the other in terms of, wanting to really take any kind of a firm position other than going with whatever way the wind blows, frankly. And Lisa, Stacie, by all means, please, whatever else you think.
Oh, Jim, ditto.
Absolutely.
I'd like to offer an additional picture with that.
Go ahead.
I've been on the board of the Housing Trust of Rutland County. Habitat for Humanity. I've done some public relations work for them. And the Habitat did a really spectacular job in raising funds to bring in a Syrian family and provide them with a Habitat house. So there are, please do not, I think it's very much a mistake to view the political center power structure as being representative of all of the community, because there are very much independent organizations in the community who have a different view of Rutland. And I would suggest in your future film, you look at the Housing Trust of Rutland County, as well as the Habitat for Humanity, because they put in an awful lot of work on this question of diversity and housing for people that are both developmentally at risk, as well as socially and have poverty questions.
Thanks for.
Yeah, I think that's a great. I thank you for adding that.
Absolutely.
That's really important. And I think you had mentioned that you had been involved, or you had mentioned Project Vision. I think that's a great example of organizations that have come together in the community that are really doing very important work that address these issues in ways that our local government either can't or won't. So I think
it's a bit of a model that's being taken up around the country, because you have the healthcare community,
and it's in the film. Actually, Project Vision's pretty significantly featured, so you'll see when you see it. We also filmed with Habitat, but had to cut cut it out for time, but there was a wonderful
I'm sure.
moment in the film where Stacie and her youth group that she worked with actually did a huge amount of work with one of the habitat builds.
Yeah.
And again, for time, we had to cut it. So when you see, hopefully, Jean, you'll see that we've
I'm
tried to be
sure.
very holistic about the film. But I do think, again, the comments I think are well taken, that there's a difference often between the elected, leadership and some of the power structures, and then the folks who are trying to make change. So we've tried to capture all of that in the film, and we've also really tried to encourage people to talk to each other across class lines.
Yeah,
in the community.
and I think
because
that's great. And
that's one of the real missing pieces in Rutland.
Lisa was one of the leaders at Brock, which has been a big agency for serving different communities in Rutland.
And you'll see a big Brock scene too.
Right. So all this is just, I agree with you. And also just want to add those little notes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Jean, I really like you.
Well, I hope you guys get to meet in person now that we can all emerge. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Who was that? Stacie that said that?
Yes.
It was Jean. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And Stacie, I think I like you too. I mean, I'm an old dude, so I don't know whether or not old dudes can say that to young women in this day and age, but keep up the good work. It's all I can say.
And thank you. And you as well. You as well. I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully now that life is opening, you'll all get to actually meet in person.
This is truly a community building film. So thank you for creating it and sharing with us, sharing the film with us, and also being here this afternoon for this conversation. And Jennifer, I think we would all be in the WRIF community and people joining us, we would all be really curious to hear when a live screening in Rutland is happening. And likewise for the Vermont PBS screening time, because there are people who rather watch things on TV than on their laptops. And so if you could keep us WRIFers abreast of that, that'd be great.
Oh, absolutely. We would with great pleasure. And hopefully when we do organize some events, maybe we can do a little work together on that, because we really would like to keep this conversation going throughout New England about all of the things that we just discussed.
Likewise. So thank you all for joining us. Tomorrow we have a filmmakers talk back with Andres de Tella, the Buenos Aires-based documentary filmmaker that our colleague Laura Plasencia will host. She just had to leave a minute ago. So you'll find the information and the film they will be talking about private fiction also on the WRIF.org website. So here's another plug to visit that website, and thank you all.
Thank you, WRIF, for having us.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.